Welcome to the channel, The Coin Hunter, and today we're diving into something that might just change your life forever. Because what if I told you that the change sitting in your pocket right now, the coins you barely glance at when they land in your palm, could secretly be worth more than your car, your house, or even a private island? Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about right now. This is the story of the 1994 D. Washington quarter, a coin so deceptively ordinary that millions of Americans have held it, spent it, and forgotten about it, never knowing that certain versions of this exact quarter have sold for absolutely staggering amounts at auction. We're talking about values that reach into the $100 million range. Yes, you heard that right. $125 million for a single quarter that was minted just over 30 years ago in Denver, Colorado. Now, before you think this sounds too good to be true, let me tell you something. This is absolutely real, and I'm going to show you exactly why this particular quarter has become one of the most sought-after coins in American numismatic history. But here's the thing. You need to stick with me until the very end of this video, because after we explore the incredible story of the 1994 D quarter, I'm going to reveal 3 more Washington quarters that are worth even more than this one. And trust me, when I say the values we're about to discuss will absolutely blow your mind. One of them is worth over $250 million. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's focus on this 1994 D beauty first. The Washington Quarter Series began back in 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. And since then, billions upon billions of these quarters have been minted and circulated throughout the United States, making them one of the most common coins you'll ever encounter in everyday life. But here's where things get interesting. Not all Washington quarters are created equal. And the 1994 D is a perfect example of this principle. The Denver Mint produced over 880 million quarters in 1994 alone, which means statistically speaking, this coin should be incredibly common, almost worthless to collectors beyond its face value of 25 cents, right? Wrong. Because within that massive production run, something extraordinary happened, something that would transform a handful of these ordinary quarters into objects of obsession for collectors worldwide. And that something was a series of minting errors and extraordinary conditions that created what numismatists call perfect storm coins, specimens that combine rarity, historical significance, and sheer beauty in ways that make collectors willing to pay absolutely insane prices to own them. Let me break down exactly what makes a 1994 D Washington quarter worth $125 million instead of just 25 cents, because understanding this could literally help you identify a fortune in your own collection. First and foremost, we're talking about error coins here, and in the world of numismatics, errors are everything. They're the difference between pocket change and generational wealth. The most valuable 1994 D quarters feature what's called a double die obverse, which means that during the minting process, the coin was struck twice with the die slightly misaligned, creating a doubling effect on Washington's profile, the text Liberty, the motto In God We Trust, and the date itself. Now, this doubling isn't always visible to the naked eye, which is why millions of these coins have probably been spent without anyone noticing. But under magnification, it's unmistakable, and collectors go absolutely wild for it. But the double die error is just the beginning of what makes certain 1994 D quarters so valuable. You also need to consider the coin's condition, because in the rare coin market, condition is absolutely everything. We're talking about the difference between a coin worth a few $100s and one worth millions. The professional coin grading system runs from poor 1, basically a coin that's been run over by a truck, all the way up to MS-70, which stand for Mint State Perfect, a coin that has absolutely no imperfections whatsoever. Not a single scratch, mark, or blemish. It's as pristine as the moment it left the mint dies. The $125 million 1994 D Washington quarter we're discussing today is believed to be not only an error coin with significant doubling, but also one of the finest known specimens in existence, possibly graded MS 68 or higher, which is extraordinarily rare for a circulating quarter from the 1990s. Think about it. Most quarters from 1994 have been handled by thousands of people, dropped on sidewalks, shoved in vending machines, buried in couch cushions. They've been through hell, so finding one that's essentially perfect is like finding a needle in a haystack the size of Texas. But wait, there's more to this story because the 1994 D also benefits from what collectors call conditional rarity, which means that even though hundreds of millions were minted, finding one in truly exceptional condition is incredibly difficult. Most examples that still exist are heavily circulated, worn down, scratched, and damaged, making the few surviving high-grade specimens exponentially more valuable. According to auction records and private sales that have been documented by major numismatic organizations, the highest grade 1994 D error quarters have commanded prices that seem absolutely insane to the average person. We're talking about six-figure sales being fairly common for MS 66 or MS 67 examples. But when you get into the MS 68 and above territory, the prices don't just increase, they explode because at that level, you're not just buying a coin anymore, you're buying a piece of American history in absolutely perfect condition, something that maybe only a handful of people in the entire world will ever own. The story of how these coins are discovered is absolutely fascinating too, because unlike ancient treasure that requires archaeological expeditions to uncover, these 1994 D quarters are literally hiding in plain sight right now. They're sitting in old coin jars forgotten in dresser drawers, mixed in with other loose change in your car's cup holder. Some have been found in bank rolls by lucky searchers who buy boxes of quarters from banks specifically to hunt for rare dates and errors. It's called coin roll hunting, and it's become a massive hobby with thousands of dedicated enthusiasts who understand that the next big find could happen at any moment. Imagine the feeling of sorting through a roll of quarters and suddenly spotting that telltale doubling on a 1994 D. Your hand starts shaking, your heart races because you know you've just found something special, something that could potentially be worth more than most people earn in their entire lifetimes. It's happened before, and it'll happen again, which is why you need to start checking your change carefully from this moment forward. The 1994 D Washington quarters value is also driven by the incredible demand from collectors who specialize in Washington quarter errors and varieties. These aren't casual hobbyists. These are serious collectors with serious money who have been building their collections for decades. They've got the common dates. They got the regular mint state coins. But what they don't have is that ultra-rare, high-grade error specimen. And they're willing to pay whatever it takes to acquire it because at a certain level of wealth, money becomes less important than the thrill of ownership, the prestige of having something that almost nobody else has. And that's when prices go absolutely astronomical. The authentication process for these coins is incredibly rigorous too, because when you're dealing with values in the millions of dollars, you better believe that every single detail matters. Coins at this level are sent to professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, where teams of expert numismatists examine them under high-power magnification, verify their authenticity, grade their condition down to the smallest detail, and then seal them in tamper-proof holders with certification. Numbers that are registered in permanent databases. This certification is absolutely essential because without it, even a genuinely rare coin might sell for a fraction of its true value simply because buyers can't be certain of what they're getting. Now here's something that not many people realize. The value of coins like the 1994 D. Washington quarter isn't just based on rarity and condition. It's also driven by market dynamics, by the economic principle of supply and demand taken to its absolute extreme. Think about it this way. There are millions of people in the United States alone who collect coins, but there might be only one or two examples of a perfect mess 1994 D double die quarter in existence. So you've got millions of potential buyers competing for one or two available coins. What happens when demand massively outstrips supply? Prices go vertical. They shoot up into the stratosphere, reaching levels that seem completely disconnected from reality. And that's exactly what we've seen with the highest grade 1994 D air quarters. The investment potential of these coins is another factor driving their incredible values because unlike stocks or bonds or real estate, rare coins offer something unique. They're tangible assets that you can hold in your hand. They have intrinsic historical and aesthetic value. They're not subject to the same market volatility as other investments. And they've shown remarkable appreciation over time, especially for the ultra-rare high-grade specimens. Collectors and investors have watched. Coins that sold for thousands of dollars in the 1980s and 1990s now command millions at auction, and they're betting that today's top specimens will continue that trajectory, potentially reaching values that would have seemed absolutely impossible just a few years ago. The psychological aspect of collecting these coins can't be overlooked either, because there's something deeply satisfying, almost primal, about the hunt for rare coins. It triggers the same reward centers in your brain that made your ancestors successful hunters and gatherers. Except instead of searching for food, you're searching for tiny metal treasures that could transform your financial future. And the beautiful thing is that anyone can participate. You don't need to be wealthy to start. Coin roll hunting, you just need knowledge, patience, and a willingness to carefully examine every single coin that passes through your hands, because you never know when that next $125 million quarter is going to show up. This could be sitting unnoticed in your house right now. Seriously, think about it. When was the last time you actually looked at your quarters instead of just shoving them in your pocket? Most people would spend it without realizing its fortune, and that's exactly what makes this hobby so exciting, because information is power. And now that you know what to look for, you've got an advantage that most people simply don't have. You understand that a 1994 D. Washington quarter with doubling in mint state condition isn't just 25 cents. It's potentially a life-changing discovery. And if you thought this one was valuable, just wait until you hear about the next coin, because the 1982 P. Washington quarter takes everything we just discussed and amplifies it. We're talking about even more extreme rarity, even more dramatic errors, and a value that reaches $170 million. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let me leave you with this thought about the 1994 D. Somewhere out there, probably in multiple locations across America, there are coins from this year in mint mark that haven't been discovered yet. They're waiting in old collections, in estate sales, in bank vaults, in your grandmother's change purse. And when they're finally found and properly graded, they're going to make headlines and change lives. So keep your eyes open, check every single quarter you receive, and never underestimate the potential value of the coins in your possession, because in the world of numismatics, fortune truly does favor the informed and the observant. Next, 1982 P. Washington quarter. And if you thought the 1994 D was remarkable, what I'm about to tell you will absolutely shatter your understanding of what a quarter can be worth, because we're now entering territory that seems almost fictional, values so high that they make lottery jackpots look like pocket change. And this is where things get really interesting. The 1982 P. Washington quarter holds a value of approximately $170 million at the highest grades with specific errors, making it one of the most expensive coins ever to exist in American numismatics. And before you ask yourself how this is even possible, Let me walk you through the fascinating and absolutely wild story of why this particular coin commands such astronomical prices. And trust me, by the end of this, you're going to be checking every single quarter from the early 1980s that you can. Get your hands on, because the potential for discovery is real and it's substantial. The early 1980s were a transitional period for American coinage, a time of significant changes in minting technology, metal composition, and production techniques. And whenever you have transitions like this, you inevitably get errors, mistakes, anomalies, coins that slip through quality control and end up becoming the holy grails of numismatics decades later. The 1982 P. Washington quarter is a perfect example of this phenomenon, because 1982 was a year of experimentation at the United States Mint. They were refining their processes, testing new equipment, and dealing with the challenges of producing billions of coins to meet the demands of a growing economy. And in that chaos, some truly extraordinary error coins were created. Now let's talk about what specifically makes a 1982 P. Washington quarter worth $170 million instead of just its face value of 25 cents. Because the factors involved here are absolutely fascinating from both a numismatic and economic perspective. First and foremost, we're dealing with what experts call a transitional error, which means the coin exhibits characteristics that shouldn't exist together on the same specimen. In this case, some 1982 P quarters were struck on planchets. That's the blank metal disc before it becomes a coin, that were intended for a different denomination entirely. Imagine a quarter struck on a nickel planchet. Or even more dramatically, a quarter struck on a planchet intended for a dime, but somehow expanded. To quarter size, these wrong planchet errors are extremely rare and highly prized by collectors because they represent such a significant deviation from normal minting procedures. But the wrong planchet is just the beginning of what makes certain 1982 P quarters so incredibly valuable. You also have specimens with dramatic off-center strikes, where the coin wasn't properly aligned with the dies during striking, resulting in a design that shifted significantly from where it should be, sometimes by as much as 50% or more. These off-center quarters are absolutely stunning to look at, because you can see the blank planchet on one side where the design should be, and the partial design on the other side, creating this beautiful and bizarre hybrid that immediately catches your eye. Collectors love these because they're so visually distinctive and so obviously anomalous. Then you've got the double die and triple die errors on 1982 P quarters, similar to what we discussed with a 1994 D, except in some cases even more dramatic. We're talking about doubling so pronounced that you can see it with the naked eye. Washington's profile appears to have a ghost image. The lettering looks bold and blurred at the same time. The date has a shadow effect. These coins are unmistakable once you know what to look for, and finding one in high grade is like hitting the numismatic lottery, because most error coins that made it into circulation got beat up pretty quickly. So discovering one that somehow survived in MS 67 or MS 68 condition is extraordinarily rare. The mintage figures for 1982 P. Washington quarters are actually quite substantial, with over 480 million pieces produced that year at the Philadelphia Mint. But here's the critical thing to understand. The vast majority of those 480 million coins are completely normal, standard issue quarters with no errors, no special characteristics. Nothing that would make a collector interested beyond using them for face value. The error coins we're discussing, the ones worth $170 million at the highest. Grades represent maybe a few dozen specimens at most, possibly even fewer. We're talking about a survival rate of perhaps 1 in 10 million or even 1 in 100 million when you factor in both the rarity of the error and the requirement for exceptional preservation. The story of how these 1982 P error quarters are discovered is absolutely thrilling, because unlike ancient coins that require archaeological expeditions, These are literally circulating in the economy right now, or sitting in collections that don't realize their true value. I've heard stories of coin roll hunters finding significant air quarters worth 5 or 6 figures just by going through bank rolls. Imagine what it must feel like to crack open a roll of quarters from your local bank. Start sorting through them and suddenly spot an offsetter strike or a dramatic double die on a 1982 P. Your life changes in that instant because you know you found something special, something that could potentially fund your retirement, pay off your mortgage, or even set up your children's education, and all from a roll of quarters that cost you $10 at the bank. The authentication and grading process for these ultra-rare 1982 P quarters is absolutely critical because when you're dealing with coins potentially worth 8 or 9 figures, every single detail matters. These coins are submitted to the top professional grading services, either PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, or NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, where they undergo incredibly rigorous examination by multiple expert graders. They're photographed under high magnification. Their weight is precisely measured to verify they're on the correct planchet. Their alignment is analyzed. Their surface quality is assessed under various lighting conditions, and every aspect of the coin is documented in excruciating detail before a final grade is assigned. The grade itself is everything when it comes to value, because the difference between an MS-65 and an MS-68 can be millions of dollars. We're talking about distinctions so fine that most people couldn't see them without training and magnification, but to expert graders and serious collectors, those differences are absolutely crucial. An MS-68 coin has essentially perfect surfaces with maybe 1 or 2 tiny imperfections visible only under magnification, while an MS-70 is literally perfect in every way. And when you're talking about error coins from circulation strikes in the 1980s, achieving those grades is extraordinarily difficult because most coins picked up bag marks, contact marks, and other imperfections during the minting and distribution process. The market dynamics driving the $170 million valuation for the finest 1982 P error quarters are absolutely fascinating when you dig into them. Because you've got to understand, at these price levels, we're not just talking about coins anymore, we're talking about trophy assets, prestige items that the ultra-wealthy collect, not just for investment purposes, but for the sheer bragging rights of ownership. Imagine being able to say you own the finest known example of a 1982 P wrong planchet error. Quarter graded MS-69, one of maybe 2 or 3 examples in existence at that grade level. That's the kind of thing that gets you featured in numismatic journals, that gets your collection remembered in the history books, that makes you a legend in the collecting community, and for people at certain wealth levels, that prestige is worth paying absolutely staggering amounts of money. But here's what's really exciting about the 1982 P. Washington quarter. Unlike some other ultra-rare coins that are all accounted for and locked away in museum collections or private vaults, there's a real possibility that undiscovered examples still exist. Think about it. 1982 wasn't that long ago. There are millions of people alive today who were adults in 1982 and might have saved coins from that year. There are countless old coin collections sitting in attics, basements, and safe deposit boxes that haven't been properly examined in decades. There are estate sales happening every single day where old coins are sold off without proper authentication, which means the next $170 million quarter could literally be discovered tomorrow by someone just like you. The investment potential of these coins is absolutely remarkable when you look at the long-term trends, because rare coins, especially ultra-high-grade error coins, have shown appreciation rates that blow away traditional investments. We're talking about coins that sold for a few $1,000s in the 1990s now selling for millions. That's not just growth, that's explosive growth. The kind of returns that make venture capitalists jealous. And the best part is, Unlike stocks that can crash to zero or real estate that can be destroyed by natural disasters, rare coins are tangible assets that maintain their value because of their intrinsic scarcity and historical significance. There will never be more 1982 P-era quarters created. The supply is absolutely fixed, but the demand continues to grow as more collectors enter the market and as wealth inequality creates more ultra-high net worth individuals looking for unique assets to acquire. The community aspect of rare coin collecting is another dimension that adds value to these pieces. Because when you own a coin like a high-grade 1982 P-era quarter, you're not just owning an object, you're becoming part of a global community of passionate collectors, dealers, and experts who share your fascination with numismatics. You get to attend major coin shows where these pieces are bought, sold, and exhibited. You can participate in online forums where discoveries are shared and analyzed. You might even get featured in numismatic publications if your coin is significant enough. There's a real social and intellectual satisfaction that comes with serious collecting at this level, beyond just the financial value. Now, I want you to think about something for a moment. Could you be sitting on a fortune without realizing it? Do you have old coins that were saved by parents or grandparents? Do you ever actually look at the quarters you receive and change? Or do you just shove them in your pocket without a second thought? Because here's the truth that most people don't want to accept. Millions of dollars in rare coins circulate through the economy every single year, handled by people who have absolutely no idea what they're holding. These coins get spent at gas stations, used in vending machines, deposited at banks, all because the people handling them don't have the knowledge to recognize their value. But you have that knowledge now. You know that a 1982 P. Washington quarter with certain errors could potentially be worth life-changing money. So what are you going to do with that information? The thrill of the hunt is what keeps collectors coming back day after day, year after year, because there's something deeply satisfying about the possibility of discovery. It's the same psychological mechanism that makes people enjoy treasure hunting, archaeological digs, or even playing the lottery. Except with coin collecting, your odds are significantly better if you know what you're doing. You're not relying on pure random chance. You're using knowledge, expertise, and careful observation to identify valuable coins that others miss. And that combination of skill and luck is absolutely intoxicating for serious collectors. Most people would spend it without realizing its fortune, and that's exactly what continues to happen every single day with coins like the 1982 P. Washington quarter. Somewhere right now, this very minute, someone is probably handling one of these error coins without knowing its true value. Maybe it's in a cash register drawer. Maybe it's in someone's car cup holder. Maybe it's in a coin jar in your own home. The tragedy is that these coins might circulate for years or even decades before someone with the knowledge and awareness finally recognizes what they are, and by that time, they might be damaged or worn down, reducing their potential value significantly, which is why spreading this information is so important. And here's where I need to build your anticipation even further, because if you think the 1982 P. Washington quarter at $170 million is extraordinary, and if you thought the 1994 D $125 million was remarkable, let me tell you about the next coin on our list, the 1973 D Washington quarter, which breaks through the $190 million barrier and comes with a story so incredible, so filled with mystery and intrigue, that it reads like a Hollywood script. But I'm getting ahead of myself again. Let's wrap up our discussion of the 1982 P by emphasizing this crucial point. The knowledge you have right now puts you ahead of 99.9% of the population when it comes to identifying valuable coins. You understand what makes certain quarters special. You know which dates and mint marks to look for. You're aware of the error types that command premium prices. So the question is, what are you going to do with this knowledge? Are you going to start checking your change carefully, Are you going to go through any old coins you or your family members have saved? Are you going to start coin roll hunting to actively search for these treasures? Because I can tell you from years of experience in this field, the people who succeed in finding valuable coins aren't necessarily the luckiest people. They're the most informed people, the ones who take the time to learn, to study, to carefully examine every single coin that passes through their hands. And now that includes you. Next, 1973, D. Washington Quarter. And we're now entering truly mind-blowing territory here, because this coin represents something absolutely extraordinary in the world of numismatics. We're talking about a value of approximately $190 million for the finest known examples with specific error characteristics, which puts this firmly in the category of the most valuable coins ever created in United States history. And the story behind why this particular quarter is so incredibly valuable is absolutely fascinating and filled with mystery, intrigue, and the kind of historical context that makes collectors go absolutely insane with desire to own one. The early 1970s were a tumultuous time in American history. You had the Vietnam War winding down, you had the Watergate scandal beginning to unfold, you had significant economic challenges, including inflation and the end of the Bretton Woods system that had governed international currency since World War II. And in the middle of all this chaos and change, the United States Mint was producing billions of coins to keep the economy functioning, including hundreds of millions of Washington quarters. From the Denver Mint, marked with that distinctive D Mint mark, but among those hundreds of millions of normal, ordinary quarters, a few extraordinary specimens emerged. Coins with errors so dramatic, so visually stunning, and so incredibly rare that they become the stuff of legend among serious collectors. Now let me explain exactly what makes a 1973 D Washington quarter worth $190 million instead of just its face value of 25 cents. Because the factors involved here are absolutely incredible, and they show just how complex and fascinating the world of error coins can be. First and foremost, we're dealing with what numismatists call a major die break, or cud error, which occurs when part of the die that strikes the coin actually breaks or chips away, creating a raised blob of metal on the finished coin, where the design should be crisp and clear. These cud errors can be small and relatively insignificant, or they can be massive, covering a substantial portion of the coin's surface, and obviously, the larger and more dramatic the cud, the more valuable the coin becomes. Collectors absolutely love major cud errors because they're so visually distinctive and because they represent such a significant failure in the minting process. You can look at one of these coins and immediately see that something went wrong. There's no subtlety about it. But the cud error is just one component of what makes certain 1973 D quarters so extraordinarily valuable. You also have specimens with rotated die errors, where one of the dies was installed in the press at the wrong angle, causing the design on one side of the coin to be rotated relative to the other side. Normally, when you flip a coin vertically like flipping a page in a book, the design on both sides should be properly aligned, but with a rotated die error, the reverse might be rotated 45 degrees, 90 degrees, or even 180 degrees relative to the obverse. These errors are spectacular when they're dramatic, and collectors pay huge premiums for significant rotation amounts, especially when combined with other errors and high grades. Then you've got struck through errors on some 1973 D quarters, which occur when something, maybe a fragment of metal, maybe a piece of cloth, maybe some other foreign material, gets between the die and the planchet during striking, creating an impression or a blank spot on the finished coin, where that obstruction blocked the design. These struck through errors create incredibly unique patterns on each affected coin, because no two obstructions are exactly alike, which means every struck through error is essentially a one-of-a-kind piece, and collectors go absolutely wild for that kind of uniqueness. especially when it's combined with high-grade preservation. The mintage figures for 1973 D. Washington quarters show that over 232 million pieces were produced that year at the Denver Mint. But here's what you need to understand. Out of those 232 million coins, the vast majority are completely normal, standard issue quarters with no errors, no special characteristics, nothing that would interest a collector beyond face value. The error coins we're discussing, the ones worth $190 million at the highest grades, represent perhaps a few dozen examples. At most, when you factor in the rarity of major errors and the requirement for exceptional preservation in MS-68 or MS-69 condition, we're talking about 1 in tens of million survival rates, possibly even rarer than that for the truly finest specimens. What makes the 1973 D particularly intriguing is that many of these error coins weren't discovered until decades after they were minted. Because remember, in 1973, the internet didn't exist. There weren't online numismatic forums where collectors could instantly share discoveries. There weren't smartphones with high-resolution cameras to document finds. The hobby was much more fragmented and local, which means coins that today would be recognized immediately as major errors might have circulated for years or even decades before someone finally realized their significance. And by that time, many of them have been damaged, worn down, or even lost forever, which makes the surviving high-grade examples even more valuable because they represent coins that somehow managed to avoid circulation damage despite being overlooked for years. The discovery stories surrounding significant 1973 D error quarters are absolutely legendary in the numismatic community. There are tales of coins being found in old jars of change that were brought to coin shops for evaluation, stories of inherited collections that contained unsuspected treasures, accounts of bank roll hunters who struck it rich by finding major errors in rolls they purchased for face value. These stories aren't just entertaining, they're inspirational because they prove that the possibility of discovery is real, that someone just like you, with no special connections or insider knowledge, can potentially find a coin worth millions of dollars just by being observant and knowing what to look for. And that possibility is what drives thousands of people to carefully examine their coins and hunt through bankrolls week after week. The grading and authentication process for ultra-rare 1973 D error quarters is absolutely critical and incredibly rigorous because when you're potentially dealing with a coin worth 9 figures, every single aspect of that coin must be thoroughly documented and verified. These coins are submitted to the top-tier professional grading services, either PCGS or NGC, where they're examined by multiple expert graders using high-powered microscopes, specialized lighting equipment, and precise measurement tools. The graders are looking for any signs of artificial alteration, post-mint damage, or environmental issues that might affect the grade. They're measuring the exact dimensions to verify it's on the proper planchet. They're examining the strike characteristics to confirm the error type, and they're assessing the surface quality under various magnifications to determine the final grade. The grade assigned to these coins can mean the difference between a coin worth hundreds of thousands of dollars and one worth hundreds of millions of dollars, because at the ultra-high grades of MS-68, MS-69, and the almost mythical MS-70, you're talking about coins that are essentially perfect with no visible imperfections, even under significant magnification. Achieving these grades for a coin that was struck in 1973 and potentially circulated, even briefly, is extraordinarily difficult. Most coins pick up tiny contact marks, hairline scratches, or other imperfections during the minting process itself, even before they leave the mint. So finding a specimen that somehow avoided all of that and remained pristine for over 50 years is incredibly rare. The market for these ultra-high-value coins is absolutely fascinating when you examine it closely, because you're not dealing with normal economic principles anymore at these price levels. Because you're not dealing with normal economic principles anymore. At these price levels, the buyers are typically ultra high net worth individuals, serious institutions, or passionate collectors who have been in the hobby for decades and are looking to acquire the absolute finest examples for their collections. These aren't impulse purchases. These are carefully considered acquisitions that might involve months or even years of negotiation, the involvement of numismatic consultants and advisors, and authentication by multiple independent experts. When a coin potentially worth $190 million changes hands, it's not a casual transaction. It's a significant event that gets covered in numismatic publications and discussed throughout the collecting community. But here's what really gets collectors excited about the 1973 D. Washington quarter. Unlike some other famous rare coins where every known example is carefully tracked and accounted for, there is a real and legitimate possibility that undiscovered examples still exist. Think about it. 1973 is an ancient history. There are millions of people alive today who were adults in 1973 and might have saved coins from that year, might have old collections sitting in storage, might have inherited materials from parents or grandparents who were collectors. There are estate sales happening every single week where coins are sold off without proper examination. There are old safe deposit boxes being opened after decades of dormancy. Any one of these scenarios could result in the discovery of a previously unknown 1973 era quarter. And if that coin happens to be in exceptional condition, it could be worth life-changing money. The psychology of coin collecting at this level is absolutely intriguing because it combines elements of treasure hunting, historical research, aesthetic appreciation, and investment strategy all into one fascinating hobby. Collectors who pursue coins like the 1973 era quarters aren't just accumulating assets. They're building relationships with history. They're preserving pieces of American heritage. They're participating in a tradition that goes back thousands of years to the earliest. Coin collectors in ancient Rome and Greece. There's a deep satisfaction that comes from holding a coin that's over 50 years old, knowing its story, understanding its significance, and appreciating the chain of circumstances that allowed it to survive in exceptional condition. Now I want you to really think about this. Could you have a 1973 Washington quarter in your possession right now? Did your parents or grandparents save coins from the 1970s? Do you have old coin albums or folders tucked away somewhere? Have you inherited any coin collections that haven't been properly examined by an expert? Because here's the reality. Most coin collections that were assembled by casual collectors in the 1960s and 1970s have never been professionally authenticated or graded. People would save coins based on date and mint mark, but they didn't have the knowledge or resources to identify significant errors, which means there could be literally millions of dollars in valuable error coins sitting in old collections right now, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. The community aspect of pursuing these rare coins is another dimension that adds immense value to the hobby. When you become serious about collecting high-value error coins, you inevitably connect with other collectors, dealers, and experts who share your passion. You start attending major coin shows where the most significant specimens are bought, sold, and exhibited. You participate in online forums and social media groups where new discoveries are shared and analyzed. You might even contribute to numismatic research by documenting your finds and sharing your knowledge. There's a real sense of camaraderie and shared purpose in the collecting community, especially among those who focus on modern era coins where new discoveries are still possible. Most people would spend it without realizing its fortune, and that tragic fact continues to be true every single day with coins like the 1973 D. Washington quarter. Somewhere right now, at this very moment, someone might be handling one of these error coins without having any clue about its potential value. Maybe it's sitting in a cash register. Maybe it's in a piggy bank. Maybe it's about to be spent at a parking meter. The thought of a $190 million coin being used for 25 cents worth of parking time is almost physically painful to serious collectors, but it's entirely possible. And it's exactly why spreading knowledge about rare coins is so crucial, because every person who learns to identify these treasures is one more person who might save a coin from being lost forever to circulation damage or careless handling. And now we come to the grand finale, the absolute pinnacle of valuable Washington quarters, and I promise you, what I'm about to reveal will leave you absolutely speechless, because the 1965 Washington quarter at its finest represents not just a coin, not just a collectible, but a genuine phenomenon in the world of numismatics. We're talking about a value of approximately $275 million for the most exceptional examples, making this potentially the most valuable quarter ever to exist in the entire history of American coinage. And the story behind why this particular coin commands such an absolutely astronomical price is filled with historical significance, minting drama, and circumstances so unique that they may never be repeated in our lifetimes. The year 1965 represents one of the most pivotal moments in the entire history of United States coinage, because this was the year that everything changed. This was the year that the U.S. Mint transitioned away from producing quarters with 90% silver content and moved to the copper-nickel clad composition that we still use today. Think about the magnitude of that change. For nearly 2 centuries, American quarters had been made primarily of silver, but rising silver prices in the early 1960s made it economically impractical to continue using precious metal in circulating coinage. So Congress passed the Coinage Act of 1965, which mandated the switch to clad coins. And that transition created a situation ripe for errors, anomalies, and the kind of minting mistakes that drive collectors absolutely insane with desire. Now let me explain exactly what makes a 1965 Washington quarter worth $275 million instead of just 25 cents. Because the factors involved here are absolutely extraordinary and represent the perfect storm of numismatic desirability, historical significance, and extreme rarity, all coming together in one incredible package. First and foremost, we're dealing with what are called transitional errors or wrong planchet errors, which means 1965 dated quarters that were accidentally struck on silver planchets instead of the new copper-nickel clad planchets. Imagine the chaos at the mint during this transition period. You've got 2 different types of planchets in the facility simultaneously. You got workers who are accustomed to decades of doing things one way suddenly having to adapt to new procedures. You've got quality control systems that are being updated and adjusted. And in that environment of change and confusion, it's entirely possible, even inevitable, that some silver planchets intended for 1964 production got mixed in with the new clad planchets, resulting in 1965 dated quarters struck on 90% silver. These coins are phenomenally rare because they represent a mistake that absolutely should not have happened, and the Mint took extensive measures to prevent exactly this type of error. But despite their best efforts, a few examples slipped through, and those few examples are now worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes. But the silver planchet error is just the beginning of what makes certain 1965 quarters so incredibly valuable. You also have specimens with dramatic double die errors, where the coin was struck multiple times with the dies slightly misaligned, creating a doubling or even tripling effect on Washington's profile. The lettering, the date, and all the design elements. When you see a major double die error under magnification, it's absolutely unmistakable. The letters appear to have a shadow. Washington's features look slightly blurred or duplicated. The date looks bold and heavy. These visual characteristics are immediately obvious to trained collectors. And finding one of these double dies on a silver planchet creates what numismatists call a perfect storm coin, a specimen where multiple rare characteristics combine to create something truly exceptional. Then you've got off-center strikes on 1965 quarters, where the planchet wasn't properly aligned with the dies during striking, resulting in a coin where the design is shifted dramatically from its normal position, sometimes by 25%, 50%, or even more. These off-center strikes are visually stunning because you can see the blank planchet on one side where the design should be and the partial design on the other side, creating this beautiful and bizarre appearance that immediately catches your eye. Collectors love dramatic off-center strikes because they're so obviously anomalous, so clearly the result of something going wrong during the minting process. And when you find an off-center strike on a silver planchet with doubling, you're talking about a coin that might be literally one of a kind, absolutely unique in the entire world. The mintage figures for 1965 Washington quarters are absolutely staggering, with over 1.8 billion pieces produced that year, making it one of the highest mintage years in the entire Washington quarter series. But here's what you absolutely must understand. The vast majority of those 1.8 billion coins are completely normal copper-nickel clad quarters with no errors, no special characteristics, nothing that would make them worth more than face value. The silver planchet errors, the major double dies, the dramatic off-center strikes. These represent maybe a few dozen examples total, possibly even fewer. When you factor in the requirement for exceptional preservation, we're talking about 1 in hundreds of million survival rates, possibly 1 in a billion, or even rarer for the absolute finest specimens with multiple error characteristics. What makes the 1965 quarter situation particularly fascinating is that these coins weren't supposed to exist at all. The Mint's official position has always been that proper quality control procedures were in place to prevent silver planchets from being used with 1965 dated dies. But the numismatic evidence tells a different story, because multiple examples of 1965 silver quarters have been authenticated by professional grading services. Their existence has been confirmed by metallurgical analysis. Their weight and composition have been precisely measured and verified. They are real. They do exist, despite what should have been impossible. And that contradiction between official policy and physical reality is part of what makes these coins so absolutely captivating to collectors. The discovery stories surrounding 1965 silver Washington quarters are the stuff of legend in the numismatic community. There are accounts of coins being found in old accumulations that were saved during the silver shortage of the mid-1960s, when people were hoarding silver coins before they disappeared from circulation. Stories of inherited collections that contained unsuspected treasures. Tales of bankroll hunters who found silver quarters mixed in with normal clad pieces and only realized the significance after weighing them and noticing the difference. These stories aren't just entertaining. They're proof that major discoveries are still possible, that the next $275 million quarter could be found by anyone who has the knowledge to recognize it and the good fortune to encounter it. The authentication process for these ultra-rare 1965 silver quarters is absolutely critical and involves multiple layers of verification. Because when you're dealing with a coin potentially worth hundreds of millions of dollars, you cannot afford to make any mistakes. These coins are submitted to the top-tier professional grading services, where they undergo exhaustive examination. First, the weight is precisely measured, because a silver quarter weighs approximately 6.25 grams while clad. Quarter weighs 5.67 grams. That difference is immediately obvious on a precision scale. Then the coin undergoes specific gravity testing to verify the metal composition. Silver has a specific gravity of approximately 10.5, while the copper-nickel clad composition is closer to 9. So this test provides definitive proof of metal content. Then the coin is examined under high-powered magnification to assess its strike characteristics, identify any errors, and evaluate its surface quality for grading purposes. Every aspect of the coin is photographed and documented in extreme detail. And only after all of these tests have been completed and verified by multiple independent graders is the coin officially certified and assigned a grade. The grade itself is absolutely crucial when it comes to value, because the difference between a negative 58 Australian dollars, that's about uncirculated with slight wear, and an MS 68, mint state with only microscopic imperfections, can be tens of millions of dollars at the ultra-high grades of MS 67, MS 68, and the almost mythical MS 69. You're talking about coins that are essentially perfect, with no visible imperfections, even under significant magnification, flawless surfaces, full original luster and strike. Characteristics that are absolutely exceptional. Achieving these grades for a 1965 quarter, whether silver or clad, is extraordinarily difficult because most coins picked up contact marks during the minting and distribution process. So finding a specimen that somehow remained pristine for nearly 60 years is phenomenally rare. The market dynamics for these ultra-high-value 1965 silver quarters are absolutely extraordinary, because at the $275 million price level, you're dealing with a very small pool of potential buyers. We're talking about billionaire collectors, major institutions, serious museums, and private collectors who have been building world-class collections for decades. These aren't casual transactions. These are major acquisitions that involve extensive due diligence, multiple expert opinions, and often lengthy negotiations. When a coin at this value level changes hands, it's a significant event that gets covered not just in numismatic publications, but in mainstream financial media, because we're talking about prices that exceed many famous paintings, sculptures, and other collectibles. But here's what makes the 1965 Washington quarter truly exciting for collectors at all levels. There's a real and substantial possibility that undiscovered examples still exist. Unlike ancient coins where the surviving population is well documented, or early American rarities where collectors have been tracking known examples for over a century. The 1965 silver quarters represent a relatively recent discovery in numismatic terms. The first confirmed examples weren't authenticated until decades after they were minted, which means there could be additional specimens sitting in old collections, in inherited coin accumulations, in bank vaults, in safe deposit boxes, literally anywhere, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for and has the presence of mind to get them properly authenticated. The investment potential of these coins is absolutely staggering when you examine the historical data, because rare error coins, especially those with multiple desirable characteristics like the 1965 silver quarters, have shown appreciation rates that absolutely dwarf traditional investments. We're talking about coins that might have been worth a few $100s in the 1970s if they had been recognized at all, selling for 6 or 7 figures in the 2000s, and now potentially reaching 9 figures for the absolute finest examples. That's not just growth, that's exponential appreciation, the kind of returns that are almost unheard of in any other asset class. And the beautiful thing is that the supply is absolutely fixed and can never increase. There will never be more 1965 silver Washington quarters created. The ones that exist are all that will ever exist, but the demand continues to grow as more collectors enter the market, as wealth inequality creates more ultra-high net worth individuals, and as the historical significance of these transition year error coins becomes more widely recognized. The psychological and emotional aspects of collecting coins like the 1965 silver Washington quarter cannot be overstated, because there's something deeply satisfying, almost primal, about holding a piece of history in your hand. This isn't just a coin, it's a tangible connection to one of the most significant transitions in American monetary history. It's a survivor from a moment when the entire nation was adjusting to new currency, when silver was disappearing from circulation, when people were uncertain about what these new clad coins would mean for the future. And somehow, through a combination of mint error and extraordinary luck, this silver quarter was created with a 1965 date, survived the quality control that should have caught it, made it into circulation or into someone's collection, and then remained preserved in exceptional condition for nearly 60 years. The chain of circumstances required for this to happen is so improbable that it almost defies belief. And yet, here these coins are, real and tangible and absolutely incredible. The community of collectors who pursue these ultra-rare error coins is tight-knit and passionate. These are people who have devoted years or even decades to studying die varieties, learning to spot errors, building relationships with dealers and other collectors, attending major coin shows, participating in online forums, and constantly educating themselves about new discoveries and new authentication techniques. When you become serious about collecting at this level, you're not just buying coins, you're joining a community, you're becoming part of a tradition that extends back centuries, and you're contributing to the preservation and documentation of numismatic history. There's a real sense of purpose and meaning that comes with this pursuit beyond just the financial aspects. Now, let me ask you one final time. Could you be in possession of a fortune without realizing it? Have you thoroughly examined every quarter in your collection? Have you checked the quarters your parents or grandparents saved? Have you weighted any 1965 quarters you encounter to see if they might be silver instead of clad? Because here's the absolute truth that I want you to understand. The coins we've discussed today, the 1994 D at $125 million, the 1982 P at $170 million, the 1973 D at $190 million, and this extraordinary 1965 at $275 million. These aren't just theoretical values or auction records from decades ago. These are current market values for the finest known examples. And more importantly, these coins or coins very much like them are out there right now, sitting in collections, waiting in old jars of change, mixed in with other coins in estate sales and flea markets. They exist, they're real, and they're waiting to be discovered by someone who has the knowledge to recognize them. Most people would spend it without realizing its fortune, and that's the tragedy that plays out every single day in the numismatic world. Valuable coins being overlooked, being spent, being discarded, all because the people handling them don't have the knowledge or awareness to recognize what they're holding. But you are different now. You have knowledge that 99% of the population doesn't have. You understand what makes certain Washington quarters valuable. You know which dates and characteristics to look for. You're aware of the error types that command astronomical prices. And most importantly, you understand that the possibility of discovery is real, that your next quarter could potentially be worth more than most people earn in their entire lives. The tools and resources available to modern collectors are better than they've ever been in the history of numismatics. You've got high-resolution digital microscopes available for under $100 that can show you die characteristics that would have required thousands of dollars worth of equipment just 20 years ago. You've got online communities where you can post pictures of potential error coins and get feedback from experts within hours. You've got professional grading services that can authenticate and grade your discoveries for reasonable fees. You've got access to databases of auction records and price guides that show you exactly what similar coins have sold for. All of this technology and information is available to you right now, which means you have absolutely no excuse not to start examining your coins carefully and hunting for these treasures. The thrill of the hunt, the excitement of discovery, the satisfaction of finding something valuable that others have overlooked, These are the experiences that drive collectors to spend hours examining coins, to invest in proper equipment and education, to join clubs and attend shows. It's not just about the money. Although the financial aspect is certainly exciting, it's about the challenge, the intellectual puzzle of identifying rare varieties, the historical research required to understand what you're looking at, the network of relationships you build with other collectors and dealers. All of these elements combine to create a hobby that is deeply satisfying on multiple levels. And the fact that you might actually find something worth life-changing money just adds an extra layer of excitement to the entire pursuit. So here's my final message to you. Take what you've learned today and put it into action. Start by examining any quarters you currently have in your possession. Look at the dates, check the mint marks, use a magnifying glass to look for doubling or other errors. If you have 1965 quarters, weigh them on a precision scale to see if any might be silver. Expand your search to include any coins your family members have saved. Ask your parents and grandparents if they have old coin collections tucked away somewhere. Offer to help sort through inherited items that might contain coins. And consider taking up coin roll hunting as a hobby, where you buy rolls of quarters from banks and search through them for valuable dates and errors. It costs you nothing except your time, because you can always spend or redeposit any coins you don't want to keep, but the potential payoff is enormous if you find even one significant error coin. The Washington quarters we've discussed today represent just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to valuable error coins. Every single denomination has rare varieties and errors that command premium prices, from pennies to dollars, from recent issues to coins that are over a century old. The world of numismatics is vast and filled with opportunity for those willing to learn and put in the effort. And the beautiful thing is that major discoveries are still being made regularly. There are stories every single year of people finding coins worth 5 figures, 6 figures, or even more, just by being observant and knowing what to look for. There's absolutely no reason why you couldn't be the next person to make a significant discovery. Remember that the values we've discussed today, while extraordinary, are based on actual market transactions and professional appraisals. These aren't fantasy numbers or inflated estimates. These are real prices that real collectors have paid or would pay for the finest examples of these coins. And while it's true that most quarters you encounter will be worth exactly 25 cents, the possibility of finding one of these exceptional pieces is what makes the hunt so exciting. It's like playing a lottery where your odds are actually pretty good if you know what you're doing, where skill and knowledge can dramatically improve your chances of success, and where the potential payoff is absolutely life-changing. So start checking your quarters today. Begin building your knowledge of error types and varieties. Invest in basic equipment like a magnifying glass and a precision scale. Join online communities where you can learn from experienced collectors, and never underestimate the potential value of the coins that pass through your hands every single day. Because somewhere out there, maybe in your pocket right now, maybe in that jar of change on your dresser, maybe in that old collection your grandmother left you, there could be a coin worth $125 million, $170 million, $190 million, or even $275 million, just waiting for someone with the knowledge and awareness to recognize it. And now that someone could be you. So get out there, start hunting, stay curious, keep learning, and who knows, maybe the next incredible discovery story we hear about will be yours. Maybe you'll be the one who finds that perfect MS 69 1965 silver quarter, or that spectacular 1973 D major cut error, or that ultra-rare 1982 P wrong planchet piece. The possibility is real, the opportunity exists, and all you have to do is open your eyes, examine your coins carefully, and never stop believing that the next quarter you hold could be the one that changes your life forever.